everyone, you're watching Business Africa. My name is Asha Sampath and welcome to our new edition dedicated to the continent's business and economic news. And like every fortnight, you can win $150 in our Business Africa game. More details later, but first, today's top stories. The Ivorian economic capital is continuing to modernize its infrastructure, necessary for its development, but raising concern among residents of the urban metro.
Today we ask, well, we would like our government to divert the underground passage. It's so simple. It's cheaper than killing 150 families, which is maybe 1,500 people.
Overpriced electricity generators with plenty of sunshine. Somalia finds a way to break the vicious cycle of expensive electricity.
We have
to encourage Somali people to use solar electricity and its advantages. It is favorable and good environmentally.
Benin tackles climate change and floods with an early warning system.
We often have floods with no warning. Our crops are destroyed and many children are killed.
Economic progress sometimes imposes heavy social and human sacrifices on the population. This is currently the case in the Ivorian economic capital during the construction of roads and transport infrastructures. We look at the construction site of the urban metro in Abidjan, where local residents are faced with the demolition of their houses. A report by Mark Camara.
Buildings around the Abidjan urban underground construction have collapsed like a house of cards and have continued to fall apart over 37 kilometers inside Abidjan. The inhabitants were asked to leave their homes without any notice, claimed this widow, driven by fear for her children's schooling. For her, it is her whole life of more than 40 years that has just vanished.
We are worried. Where should we go with our children? Even if I could ask my parents to help me, everyone has their own properties. These are my grandchildren. They can't be enrolled at school. Where do I go with my children? I can't go against the state. But I wanted to stress that they are the people of law enforcement. Before you tell a tenant to leave your house, you have to warn him. I've been here for 40 years.
Near the camp of the 43rd Infantry Battalion of the French Navy in the seaside town of Popoué, more than 150 families are concerned out of a total of 13,000 households affected by the project. The local residents do not intend to give up. They have formed a collective to defend their rights and interests.
In our meeting with the Minister of Transport, he told us he could not go beyond December. And I took it upon myself to say to him that our children are in school, our grandchildren are in school, and they have the right to be educated. So if the Minister cannot go beyond December before evictions or the departure of residents, what happens to our children, our grandchildren? Today we ask, well, we would like our government to divert the underground passage. It's so simple. It's cheaper than killing 150 families, which is maybe 1,500 people.
Around this project to decongest and open up the suburbs of Greater Abidjan, the despair among the inhabitants can be strongly felt. According to this 72-year-old pensioner, 2 people have already died since this announcement was made in her area.
You see this lovely lady in the picture? When she heard the announcement on August 23rd that we must vacate the premises on August 25th, she couldn't stand it. After a nervous breakdown, we buried her. We ask the President of the Republic not to abandon us. We are his elders and he must not leave us in the streets.
Numerous road and infrastructure construction projects are underway in Abidjan. And according to this architect, they should transform the Pearl of the Lagoon's silhouette.
Abidjan
is already reviewing all its infrastructures. We are adapting new districts, new infrastructures that allow a more fluid expansion for the greater Abidjan that was planned. The urban metro will contribute to the aesthetics of the city. As architects, we shape cities. Any building we create, whether a residential building or a building with a functional purpose, commercial or whatever, it's necessary to provide a new image for the district.
Transport represents the third major expense for Ivorians. According to a World Bank report, traffic jams caused the country to lose nearly 5% of its GDP in 2017. The Ivorian company for managing railway assets assures that all those affected by this project will be compensated. According to the company, this project offers an economical alternative to a capital suffocated by traffic jams and long commuting distances to connect neighborhoods.
Despite all the infrastructure built in recent years, the underground comes on top of the various solutions implemented to increase mobility in the city of Abidjan. And mobility necessarily means economic performance of the city. So it is very important that this line can enter circulation quickly. Everyone will be successful as soon as these people come to us with reliable documents.
J'en parle parce que, notamment en ce qui concerne le foncier,
I say this because many own land but don't have the documents to allow us to recognize their ownership.
nous permettre de leur reconnaître leurs droits.
The Abidjan Urban Underground should be operational in 2025, which is good news for users, who should represent more than 500,000 people per day.
A week before COP27, the major annual United Nations event dedicated to the fight against climate change opens its doors on Sunday in Egypt for a fortnight. This is the first time it is being held in Africa, and I will have the pleasure of giving you an overview from Sharm-El-Sheikh with Business Africa reporting team. The continent's countries are already preparing to defend their positions on the solutions to be favoured to achieve carbon neutrality. South Africa, for example, will unveil its plan to attract private capital to its energy transition. The aim is to close 10 coal-fired power stations and produce electric vehicles. African airlines are struggling to recover from COVID. While they have resumed traffic on 99.2% of the routes they operated before the pandemic, the same cannot be said for passengers. According to figures from the Association of African Airlines, there's still a shortfall of 1/3 of passengers on the continent's domestic routes. Meanwhile, in Somalia, the World Bank estimates that 11 million people have no access to electricity. Diesel-powered generators are the primary source of some of the world's most expensive energy, costing around $1 per kilowatt per hour. But now, thanks to a solar power plant on the outskirts of the capital Mogadishu, these costs have fallen sharply. A real boost for the local economy. Take a look. For many residents of Mogadishu, access to electricity has not only been prohibitively costly, but also a heavy price for their health and comfort. Huge diesel generators blaring the whole day, while emitting thick smoke coupled with high electricity bills, was too heavy a price for many. However, a new solar energy project pioneered by Beko Lighting Company in Mogadishu is gradually transforming energy production and costs.
ERCO has been started in 2014. At that time, the whole city didn't have any power system. What I'm saying, power system, everything was low voltage. Right now, we have 11 kV system, 33 kV system, substations, almost like any other city in the world. Diesel is high, solar is much, much cheaper. So the Somalia, one of the reasons that we are interested to invest in green energy is we are getting more than 3,000 hours of sunshine per year.
The Mogadishu-based company recently signed a $30 million contract to generate a hybrid 35-megawatt contract. This comprises 25 megawatts from solar and 10 megawatts from battery. It also operates 500 transformers to boost distribution of power. As a result of these investments, the solar project has already brought a huge improvement in people's lives.
We used to power up 5 large generators which produced 5 megawatts, and it was very noisy and polluted the air.
The burden of access to cheap and reliable electricity has now largely been lifted from the shoulders of many consumers. Big consumers such as hotels, which used to suffer high overheads because of costly power, have seen their monthly expenditure come down a great deal.
Beko now provides the most reliable and cheapest electricity in Somalia, and it is always available. The price of electricity is cheaper than before. Previously, it cost $600 for electricity for my business, but now the rates have gone down. I pay less than 20 cents. And for a more powerful supply, before Beko charged $1.2 per kilowatt, and with that, we could not use heavy machines for the hotel business because of the rate. But after they installed the solar system, we have reliable and powerful electricity at a rate of 20 cents per kilowatt. Now we can use all the machines to run our hotel services properly.
You know, the biggest challenge in Somalia when it comes to green energy, I can say, is the financing. You know, the biggest problem we're facing is the international financing, not the local ones. Like we are using Salam Somali Bank in Somalia, but if we try to deal with the international companies and international banks, we are getting a lot of problem because, you know, most people, when they hear the word Somalia, they say, no, we're not going there. That's the biggest challenge.
Salam Somali Bank is the first Islamic bank established in Somalia during the most chaotic time of Somalia's recent history.
The solar energy project is huge, and it's one of the biggest ventures that Salam Somali Bank has undertaken. It's an ongoing project, and we estimate it will cost millions of dollars of investment.
According to a study by the African Development Bank, Somalia has a solar power potential of an excess of 2,000 kilowatt-hour square meters. This is, however, in contrast to the fact that only 16% of the population has access to electricity. We have to encourage Somali people to use solar electricity and its advantages. It is favorable and good environmentally. I mean, Somalia faces drought and floods after the misused environment. The main challenges of using clean and green in Somalia is lack of knowledge of green energy, and they don't know it takes time to introduce it. For Beko, the ultimate goal is to phase out diesel power generators and adopt cleaner and greener options with solar energy on top of the list. This direction will not only ease the burden of high electricity overheads, but also contribute to reduce environmental pollution.
When we finish the solar project, the dependency on diesel generators will be reduced, and our clients will get the lowest price for our electricity. As you can see, when we were using diesel, the price was always very high.
With access to sunshine throughout the year, investment in solar energy in Somalia can be a profitable venture and a safe path towards green energy. However, limited access to credit, reluctant international investments, and security challenges still inhibit robust adoption of solar power. Welcome to the second part of our show. After decades of underbanking, Africa has entered the era of electronic payments and cryptocurrencies, a gigantic market which is attracting all kinds of interest and is sometimes moving faster than the infrastructures responsible for controlling it. In this landscape, what about the GIMAC payment card, the CIMAC interbank electronic money grouping that brings together the 6 Central African countries? I asked the question to Valentin MBOZO'O, GIMAC's Director General, in Yaoundé in his office. This card, which has now become one of the major international cards with over 11 million transactions processed. Let's listen to him. Hello, Valentin. The GIMAC is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. And in 2016, you created with the Central Bank of Central African States the GIMAC card, competing with major international cards, Visa, MasterCard and Union Pay. How is this launch somehow revolutionary?
La carte. GIMAC lancé en 2015.
The GIMAC card launched in 2015 was revolutionary because before there was no sub-regional interoperability.
On est une entité.
We are a group of 6 countries with a central bank that issues a currency called the CFA franc, which is pegged to the euro. And interoperability was done internationally at prohibitive costs. The great advantages the GIMAC card brought to the sub-region was it allowed banks to operate together in the sub-region, and also in terms of reducing costs.
At the launch of GIMAC, you announced that one of the priority objectives was the democratization of the banking card. When we look at the average rate of banking in the sub-region, we barely reach 15%, half the rate of sub-Saharan Africa. How do you explain it?
If we look at the percentage of the market share of the GIMAC card, it is now the 2nd largest card in CIMAC, behind Visa, and soon it may even be the largest. So success? Yes. People now know what a card is. They didn't know because before the elite had the international cards and the little people didn't have a card. So now when we say democratized, it's because everyone, now without exception, even very modest people, have this card.
Since 2012, you have been at the head of GIMAC as managing director, and you benefit from the support of your supervisory authority, the Central Bank of Central African States. How has GIMAC improved the daily lives of Central Africans, and what is the biggest challenge left to overcome by 2030?
In terms of improving or revolutionizing the lives of the people of Central Africa, I would first talk about mobility. Imagine that from town to town or country to country, it used to be difficult to get around without cash. Now it's a matter of course. It allows the people of the sub-region to move around in complete security, without carrying cash in their pockets to pay or make withdrawals wherever they are. There is another development that is not perhaps a card, but is mobile. We have achieved what we call full interoperability. This is the card of mobile card transactions and transfers that converge in the platforms and allow total mobility, or take into account the very essence of the populations of the sub-region.
I'd like to have your thoughts on the cryptocurrency project in the Central African Republic, the Sango coin. What is it? Is it an initiative that can be replicated across the continent?
Innovation initiatives are always welcome, but feasibility can be a problem in terms of the availability of the tool or the currency in question. Because in a country, every citizen is entitled to make payments at any time. Finally, the currency is designated as local currency. However, when we look at the digital environment in the Central African Republic, it is still at the primary stage. So my concern is that somewhere we have put the cart before the horse.
Je redoute seulement que quelque part on ait mis la charrue avant les bœufs. À savoir que peut-être qu'il faudrait.
Perhaps we should think about how to evolve towards these currencies in the days, years, or months to come. But there is a problem. Would it be viable for other countries?
Pour les autres pays, je ferai la même analyse.
I would reach the same conclusion while the infrastructures are not yet completely available. It could be as a national currency, so there are still some reservations on this point.
Un peu réservé sur ce point.
In addition to an unstable political situation marked by violent demonstrations that have left dozens dead, Chad is in the grip of a climate emergency. The country has experienced its worst floods in 3 decades, and a state of emergency has been declared. 1 million people are affected and hundreds of hectares of farmland have been ravaged. And precisely how predictable are these catastrophic floods? Benin's vast coastal plain, where people have always lived off aquaculture and agriculture, may have the answer. After the devastating floods in 2010, Benin has set up a warning system that works. We saw this firsthand in 2014 in this report by Lauren Rimondi.
Most people in Benin live in the south of the country, in major cities such as Cotonou, the economic capital, and Porto Novo, the administrative capital. There is also a vast coastal plain with a network of rivers including the Niger and the Weme. Villagers here have always made a living from fishing and agriculture. However, in recent years, this fertile environment has been increasingly under threat. No one can forget the tragic floods of 2010 that left 46 people dead and 680,000 homeless. Benin is paying the price for climate change, with devastation caused by heavy rain and rivers bursting their banks, as in the village of Agueguez, in the low-lying areas of the Weme Valley.
We often have floods with no warning. Our crops are destroyed, and many children are killed.
The school, the village hall, and villagers' houses have been flooded countless times.
When the water levels rise, houses are flooded, and we have to evacuate people to avoid disastrous consequences.
Faced with an alarming situation, the government has decided to take action. An early warning system, or EWS, was launched to head off disaster. Following the example of systems already in place in Kenya and the Netherlands, the EWS anticipates floods, as well as periods of drought or strong winds, thanks to a graduated scale that runs from green for a normal situation to red for imminent danger. It is now the beginning of the short rainy season, and the region is on red alert. The specialists are working frantically. The situation is potentially dangerous for the inhabitants of 12 communities. 3 days earlier, the monitoring of water levels, morning and evening, on these measuring poles, situated in the rivers, showed abnormally high water levels. The data were sent to the control center, where real-time forecasts are made.
Here we have the forecast for the river Ouémé at Bono. And the measurements we received from the monitors in Bono. And here in red is our forecast. So as you can see, it is a 3-day forecast.
If the final alert is issued, local mayors will make sure homes along riverbanks are evacuated and the inhabitants moved to safety.
This red alert warns us that the water levels have risen and the river has burst its banks and started to flood people's homes. We contacted the National Civil Defense Agency responsible for crisis management in Benin. They have contingency plans and take the necessary measures. They know what needs to be done.
Climate change can be life-threatening, but also has major economic consequences. 2010 floods resulted in an estimated $256 million worth of damage and loss of revenue. There is, of course, a price to pay for local inhabitants, as with the Niger River flood.
Lorsqu'il y a débordement et nous n'arrivons pas à canaliser ce fleuve,
When the river breaks its banks, we cannot control the floodwater, and it washes away crops as well as homes, causing havoc for the people in the area. We had invested heavily to make it possible to grow cash crops in the valley, so you can imagine the losses incurred.
Alors, vous voyez, le déficit de la culture vivrière, ça met en cause, en quelque sorte,
the local population's food security is jeopardized and youth unemployment rises.
Et donc, nous allons rechercher des ressources qui sont très importantes, de l'ordre de plus de 95 milliards.
We are going to take major steps, investing around $185,000 million to rebuild the dikes along the River Niger, to channel the water when the river reaches flood levels.
De contenir, lorsque, en cas d'inondation, de contenir le fleuve dans son lit.
The government-implemented Commission for Economic Modelling of the Impact and Integration of Climate Change has just been set up. This sends out a clear signal to the country and its people, but it is, above all, an effective working tool that anticipates the financial cost of climate change and the impact on national budgets. This political decision requires the involvement of several government ministries if it is to be successfully implemented.
La commission qu'on vient d'installer est un outil.
The commission that we have just set up is a tool we can use to coordinate decisions and to make sure the decisions we take are competent. We are not interested in erratic spurts of growth. We need lasting, sustainable growth. And if you want stability, you have to factor in coping with climate change.
Benin is one of 11 African countries to benefit from the UNDP-backed early warning system. The country's long-term goal is to work in collaboration with its West African neighbours. Benin is something of a pioneer in Africa and beyond, a testimony to the political will to take its future into its own hands.
We need to anticipate. Rather than waiting for humanitarian aid, we should be evaluating risks in a professional manner and integrating the information in our budget forecasts.
Well, it's now time to reward our loyal viewers of Business Africa. It's up to you to answer to the following questions. If you're drawn among those who have given the correct answers, you will win $150. This is game number 588, so listen carefully to the two questions that follow, and good luck. First question, how many people are affected by the construction of the Abidjan urban metro? 11,000, 13,000 or 15,000? Second question, when was the Beko solar energy project in Mogadishu launched? In 2009, in 2011 or in 2014? You know the answers. You can participate now by going to our website africaonair.com. In the replay section, answer the questions, fill out your form, and good luck. And of course, don't forget to include your contact details, name, address, telephone, email, and the answers, of course. Check out the terms and conditions in the replay section on our news website, africaonair.com. The winner will receive $150 as our winner this week. Congratulations, you gave the correct answers to our previous game. Here are the details. First question, how many cocoa trees does Julie Nyangwee's plantation count? The answer, 1,000. Second question, what's makwala? Answer, smoked herring. Well, that's it. Business Africa is over for today. I'll see you next week, same time, same channel for Initiative Africa. We'll be hosting Anik Kamgang, the illustrator and co-author of the comic book report Lucha. In the meantime, you can watch our show again on our news website, africaonair.com, and follow us on all our social media networks. Feel free to share, like, and comment using the hashtag Business Africa. Take care of yourselves and see you next week. Goodbye.